All right. Hello, everyone. And today I am going to talk about why we recently revisited and revised the jobs to be done in pipeline execution and the process the approach that we took to do it. So, I mean, it's not an ideal practice to keep on changing the jobs to be done that is there for the stage groups because jobs are supposed to be timeless. They are timeless. If the job that we keep the job at the center of everything that we do in a stage group. So in case we are like changing them often, it's not a good practice because that also means that the focus of the stage group is kind of, it's not stable. So keeping all of those concerns in mind, like what made us take the decision to go and revise the jobs to be done is what I'll be talking about today. So let's get started. All right. So when I started 2 years back as a product designer in GitLab, the stage group that I was working with was continuous integration. And there were a bunch of categories within that, namely artifacts, rules, variables, merge train secrets. Now, in this span of 2 years, a lot has happened. The stage group as is doesn't exist. It was broken down into pipeline execution and pipeline authoring. And not just that, there are many categories that were taken out and many that were added to the stage group pipeline execution. I can show like what the status quo is like. So today we have these three categories: continuous integration scaling, and merge trains. Now, continuous integration scaling is something that has been very newly added, like some few quarters back. And that was done because we realized that there was the number of bills that we were processing, it was kind of increasing exponentially. So what is it that we need to do on the backend side to be more prepared for the challenges that are to come? Now, this is just to kind of give an idea about like how much has changed and how much has evolved in this time span. And that has not just affected the number of categories within Verify pipeline execution, but also the vision, the mission, and the plan that we laid out, the maturity plan that we laid out. So keeping all of those things in mind, we thought that, so a job to be done is composed of job performer, that's who, then job, the process, and then the need. And in this one, I felt that I had a different understanding of the process and the need. Now, the jobs might not change, but the person who has been documenting and kind of deriving or arriving at the jobs to be done, the understanding changes. And that also calls for relooking at what was done before, what was documented before. And that's why we thought of taking forward this exercise of like redoing this whole process of understanding like what are the core jobs that pipeline execution as a stage group should be looking at. Now, what do we use JTBDs for? Just like any other stage group and what we have documented here in the handbook, we use it to define the scope of our work, like the field of vision, like what is it that we'd be looking at. Then for identifying competitors, now this has been really helpful in this specific thing for me at least, because when you have the jobs to be done right, you understand competitors better. Because usually how we look for competitors is we try to see like which of the other products like are providing a very similar solution than like that we are, but that's not necessarily that we should be looking at. We should be looking at that if this is the job that our product is helping to get done, then how are the other products doing it? Are they doing it the same way or in any different way? So we often completely ignore the indirect competitors if we don't have the JTBD right. So to make sure that we are like thinking about the indirect competitors correctly, it's also important to like look at your JTBD if that's in place. And it helps in definitely assessing the maturity of the categories, help decide at what level do we want to innovate. Yeah, so we talk a lot about the level and the elevation of the jobs to be done. And what this also helps with is it helps us decide like at what level do we want to innovate. If we keep it very like, if we go too granular and focus on a feature and word it like very specific to a feature, that means we kind of have decided that we are not going to be moving a level up and looking at things from a more broader perspective. So always like making sure that they are well elevated, and then that we kind of leave enough room for innovating when it comes to the solution. Then we also had our maturity plan in place. So to get like to kick start the whole set of activities that we have planned for this year, it was important to like take care of this particular activity. All right. Then yeah, then comes the part like how did we do it? How did we make it happen? So this time, some learnings that I had from before was that I mean, we had some knowledge about what users are coming to the stage group, the features related to the stage group to perform, and like taking all of those existing knowledge, we arrived at a main JTBD, which was like, which you could say was theoretical, but it was still backed by enough evidences so far, because we have done a lot of research in this time that we have spent working on things. So taking that as the main job, we arrived at a hypothesis, and we kind of then used that hypothesis to come up with the whole set of questions and you could go and like look at all the questions here in the Dovetail project. I'm not going to open that because that might reveal the identities for some interviewees. So that's we took that as the basis of arriving at this whole list of questions. But then when it came to actually executing all of those, we took a very different approach this time. And when I say we, I mean me and Erica. So Erica helped me put this template or a deck together, and how it was different. It was different because here we involved the interviewee to kind of participate and engage more in the whole interview process. So it wasn't just me like asking questions and taking notes all by myself and then kind of putting my own interpretation in the research analysis, but rather doing it together with the interviewee. So Erica suggested that we use these bars to kind of like ask questions such as like, in which industry do you see your work fitting in, and then just place the bar. So a lot of visual indicators there. And the questions were also laid out very clearly and in a very different way. But there was one part of the whole exercise that I thought was the most helpful, and which is this section where we followed the same process as what's mentioned in our handbook section that says how to create a job map. Like, we do have to think of different stages, and the purpose of selecting these different stages is to make sure that we are covering the before, during, and after of the whole of the sequence of jobs, so that there's no context that's missing. So keeping that in mind, I mean, this is not something that we came up with in the first go. We ran a couple of pilots and then refined this, of course, but we gave them like a blank screen with just these headers and sort of like a more abstract sort of explanation for each of the stage, so that they could interpret it in a more broader way and not like get too specific. The discussion shouldn't get too specific. Then we ask them questions such as like, what are the types of tasks that you do, and what are your goals with those tasks? And since it was sort of an open-ended question, we got a lot of different kinds of information. And the different indicators that you see here are from the follow-up questions that we asked, like, which is the most problematic part of this of the 6 stages that you went through, and where do you think things can be more automated, and what are the opportunities that you see for improvement, even if they are GitLab users, and also when they are not GitLab users, because that means when we're interviewing non-GitLab users, we are also finding opportunities. That means those are the areas where even our competitors are not currently, I wouldn't say not innovating, but at least they don't have something so solid out there yet. So identifying those opportunities through these interview sessions that we did. The next step was, of course, going to Dovetail, documenting everything there, then going to Mural, kind of doing an exercise to analyze, like put everything together, then see like how this can be translated or how this can be distilled into a single job and then converting them into statement. And then finally, of course, creating a merge request to get things merged. Now, what I have out there might not be very perfect at this moment, but I think using this process, we made sure that what we are like the kind of information that we are putting out there is more solid. So there was this statement that I came across somewhere in the handbook that said it is crucial to ensure that the job statements are grounded in experience and not theory. And we must have a high level of confidence in our job statements before we can put them into use. So this was what kind of pushed me into taking a different approach this particular time. And yeah, I would love to hear some feedback. But also, I have some open questions still. So I mentioned about the stage groups, I mean, the categories that we have in pipeline execution group today. So there's this one category that we call as non-marketable category, because it kind of is preparing our product to tackle problems that would come with like processing a very high number of bills, or when what happens when we have like a huge number of pipelines running. So what would the experience from the back end? Would things lag? Would things be delayed? Or would failures happen? Like how to avoid all of those situations. Now, a user doesn't think about all of those because they think that as a product, it's kind of given that the team would be working on the stability, availability, and all of those important parts. But since this is a category and we do have to think about the maturity, it gets kind of challenging. Like, how do we document the JTBD for that kind of relates to these categories? So for now, what we have put out there is kind of, I would say, theoretical because it hasn't directly come from our users. But yeah, as we learn more from the process, that would be updated. Now, this is all that I had to share with the team, and I would love to hear some feedback. Okay, no questions?
I'll ask a quick question. How long did it take to do the research sort of from end to end?
So this was happening around the time when I was also moving across countries. So it did take us about 1.5 months.
Yeah, okay. That's what I would expect because you have to plan the study and recruit and get the data, and you did a lot of analysis. Any other questions?
I'll make a comment. Thank you so much for sharing this, Vitika. I'm really excited to hear teams using jobs to be done. I would love for us to figure out, which I think you're showing here, how we can incorporate them more and more into our workflow, our daily workflow. So this was just a great example. So thank you so much for that. Is there anything that stood out? I want to ask you a question. So is there anything that stood out in this process to you that was maybe a key learning that someone else who wanted to do this should be mindful of?
So the stages that we put across for users to talk about, it like heavily depends on what is the one job or what is the area in the workflow that you're focusing on. So what we started off with, it was like highly imperfect. And we kind of had a lot of learning in the very first pilot that we ran, and we had to like change the definitions and even the name for the stages that we had put on those blank slides. So I think that's one thing that other designers can be more careful about. And this was very helpful because when I previously did the same exercise all by myself, like I did have data from user researchers, mostly my own interpretations. And I just went on Mural to create these job maps, define different stages and populate the data by myself. It's very different from that. Like it really differs from that. And I'm just glad that I used this particular method to do it this time.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Vitika.